started, and I just want to first start by saying the whole purpose of today is to try to give you all some information about how housing navigators can help our developers during this 9% tax credit application process, which starts pretty much this week. The application submission opened last week, and you'll see that here in a few minutes. And they were all due by the 8th, but sometimes they put extensions in there, and I didn't see one, but that doesn't mean there's one there. I think they have, through the QAP, I believe it gives them up to 5 days they can extend the application process for one reason or another. Last year they did, they extended it. I didn't see extension for this year, but that doesn't mean it's not there. So very shortly, we should start seeing these applications online, and I'm going to show you how to find those applications. And I'm going to tell you, I think it's important for you to know a little bit about the 9% tax credit housing in order to kind of have the confidence you need when you're talking to these developers. So I'm going to give you some information about the tax credit program itself, and then show you how to find the information that you're going to need to do what you do. Now, one of the things that I want to say up front is I have learned, this is one of the things I've learned through this whole process working with you all, is how different our environments are. Our environments are very, very different, and I'll point that out as we go along. But for some of you that are in very urban environments, you're going to see a lot of this. And for some of you that are in very rural environments, I realize you haven't seen a tax credit application maybe in a couple of years in your or more in where you're working. But I'm going to educate you on what it is, and then at some point in time, I hope we can get to the point where we're working with those of you in rural environments to see how we introduce you to developers, and that you can kind of sit down with them at some point and talk about what would they need from you in order to come in and put together an application within your service area. Because I think that if you create the correct environment for them, that I think they would be happy to come in and do that as long as the demand's there. And I think, pretty much across the board, I only know of one area that they've talked about not having a lot of demand for it. In our area, it's just supply and demand is so out of whack, and the rents have gone up so fast. The number of new units hasn't even kept up with the new people that are being put out of the market by rents increases that used to be able to afford it, can't afford it anymore. So okay, so we're going to get started. Just right off the bat, one of the things that you'll hear about tax credit housing, or we run into a lot, is that it's not affordable. And so I want to make sure we talk about what is the 9% tax credit housing. And this, and I'll tell you the difference between 9 and 4 in just a few minutes. But as far as the 9% goes, it is mixed income housing. Now, when I click on that link, are you guys able to see the page on the website?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, as you'll see, this is an application that I'm going to use as an example. It's the Palladium Denton. It was an application that was put together in my service area a few years back. I think it was in 17 or 18. And so as you'll see, when they apply for these, this is their rent schedule, but you'll see that they have, of the 1-bedroom units here, they have 4 of them that are at the 30% AMI unit level. This is the proposal they put together in their application to TDHCA for the tax credits. So then they have 24 1-bedrooms at the 24, 24 at the 50% level, 8 at the 60% level, and then they have 9 units in 1-bedroom units at the market rate. And then you go down, and then you're going to look at the 2 bedrooms, and they've got 4 at 30%. So if you look here, they've got a total of 10 30% AMI units in all. And you can see that's a very small number of the total number of units in the complex. The 30% units are restricted to people making less than 30% of the area median income, which are the very, very highly subsidized units. So when you're calling them, you know, most of the time when we see people calling us for help, many of the people we see have, you know, they're only on disability, their whole monthly income is maybe $780 a month. And so even these look crazy expensive for affordability. But if you look over into the program rent limits, you'll see how the rent is adjusted based on, and this is the income, the rent, under program notes. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but for the 1-bedroom 30% unit, it shows $403 a month, which is the program rent that they're allowed to charge. But for the market, for that same unit, to a market rate prospective tenant, it's $890 a month for that exact same unit. And so you'll see the difference between the 30, 40s, 30, 50s, 60s, and market rate units, and you'll see the rents there that they're going to be restricted to. Now, just so you know, those are adjusted annually, and there's a website, there's a link on the TDAC website that they have to go to annually to get the rents for them for that year. And the rents have, it's really complicated. It has to do exactly when their apartment complex came online. So there's some small varying factors, so that you'll see there's a pretty complicated link on their site for them to determine what their rents are going to be for the upcoming year. So then we talk about the fact that the units are not sliding scale. You know, when we talk, these are stair-step units. So again, you know, of all of the units here, they've got 10 of them at 30%, 38 at 50%. Well, most of the time we're used to the housing choice vouchers where the rents just slide with the tenant's income, and they remain at 30% of their income. Here, everyone who's in a 30% unit is going to be paying the same amount for a 1-bedroom 30% AMI unit. Everyone in the 50% unit is going to be paying the same amount, even if their incomes are very different. You know, when you have a tenant that qualifies for a 30% and they don't have any 30% available, which as I'm assuming you can imagine, as soon as they open these up for a new apartment complex, the 30% go in a matter of minutes. They get applications and they fill up the 30% units. And then, like everything else we deal with in affordable housing, there's a waiting list. But now, someone who qualifies for a 30, they can rent a 50, but they've got to have resources to back up. You know, as you all, I'm sure, experience, the landlords are going to require, not only do they fall under the qualifying limit, but also they all have to have a certain amount of income, usually double or triple. I know some are double, some are 2.5 times, some are even 3 times the monthly rent. They've got to have an income in order for them to approve them for the unit, because they want to make sure they get their rent, because they do have a mortgage to pay, and the whole reason why there isn't more 30% units is you just can't make the economics work. It's very, very difficult to make the economics work when you get substantially a number of additional 30% units. Now, sometimes some other sources of money will come into play, and maybe they'll buy down, maybe the city will give them $1 million where they're building. And if the city gives them $1 million, maybe they'll say in their agreement, we're going to expect for you to have 3 more 30% AMI units, in addition to the fact that we want this built, you know, we want to get this affordable housing built. There may be again, factors outside of the tax credit money that cause it to have more, but there's not going to be substantially more until you get into permanent supportive housing, and that's a little bit of a different animal. So again, it's stair-stepped, it's not sliding scale, and so that's where we have to educate people on what tax credit housing is. It's mixed income housing, it's not sliding scale housing. So then we're going to talk about the income limits and rent limits. Here is the tool on the TDHCA website, where they go in each year and get their rent and income limits for each individual property. And again, it's very specific to that property. It has to do with when their units came online, meaning when they first were able to rent the first units. And then it's adjusted based on that each year. And so it's very specific to each property. Although most of the time you'll see it's somewhat similar, but there are factors that would cause one property possibly to have a different a different adjustment than others. So then a little bit more about rent and income limits. You can go to TDHCA. I just put this on here for you guys to have that resource and be able to go to it, and you can read and find out more about the limits. As much as they call them 30% rental units, because both, when you're talking about a 30% unit, you're talking about the income requirement that the tenant would make a maximum of 30% of the area median income. But then you're also talking about the rent structure for the unit would be based on 30% of the rent in the area. And again, that is not quite exact. You're going to go in there. I mean, for the example I used just a minute ago, the $400 and something was not 30% of the $890 that market rate people were paying. So they call it 30% unit. I can't tell you why it's not exactly 30%, but this is where they, the link I showed you before is where those are set each year, but they call them 30% AMI. So then the difference between 4% housing tax credits and 9%. Today we're talking about 9% housing tax credits, which are commonly referred to as competitive tax credits. Non-competitive tax credits are 4% units. We do need to do a webinar on that. To be honest with you, I'm not the one to do that one. I'm going to get somebody to do it. I've been involved in those years ago. They actually 4%. Years ago, they were so popular that there was a lottery for those properties or that funding, and for many years it became very unpopular because the bond rates for bond financing were too high. Well, now that interest rates have come down very low, all of a sudden 4% have become very popular again. And I was on a webinar here a month and a half ago, and they're going back to the lottery system they haven't used since I think about 2003 was the last time they used it. So, but 4% are non-competitive, and those are financed in conjunction with bond financing. 9% is what we're talking about today. And in the 9% application process, and I'll show you here when we get to the spreadsheet of properties that were awarded this last year, you'll see that every single point counts. These come down to, I can tell you many times they come down to a tiebreaker, and there are several levels of tiebreakers in order to decide who gets the funding. You will see how competitive it is and how important each individual point is. And I want you to know that, to know when we're helping developers get letters from non-for-profits, every single one of those letters is critically important to their deal. And so, so please remember every point counts. How the tax credits work is the tax credit. If a property is awarded, usually there's a limit of $1.5 million. If a property is awarded $1.5 million, that means they're going to get $1.5 million, $1.5 million in tax credits each year for 10 years. So really what they're getting is $15 million in tax credits. But as you see in all of the information we're going to look at, they're applying for $1.5 million in tax credits. Once again, that's equivalent to $15 million, but they've always just referred to it as the 1 year amount, so $1.5 million a year. And the tax credit, these tax credits are sold to investors up front, and the investors buy them all up front. So they're putting in all the cash up front in order for the rights of these tax credits for the next 15 years. And companies buy these to offset their corporations buy these to offset their tax liabilities for now and in the future. So what happens is the developer sells these through, sell these out in the market. And once they're sold, they get all of the funds up front. And so that reduces the amount of money they have to borrow to build the affordable housing complex. So, but there's restrictions on it. And so they have to make sure that their property stays in compliance. Because if they don't, the corporation that's bought the right to their tax credit is at risk of losing their tax credit benefit. So, so again, this is a ton of money that the developer gets because he sells these tax credits up front. He takes this money, uses it, for the lack of a better term, as the down payment on the property, so that he doesn't have to borrow that additional money. And then what comes with that is the restrictions, and we just talked about the rent and income restrictions. There's a whole bunch of other restrictions that come with that. We're not going to get into all of that. It gets very complicated. But the restrictions on the property. And so the developer has to sign a land use restriction agreement, which is called a LURA. And their LURA agreement includes things like the services they're required to provide for the residents, the amenities that they're required to put in the property. That's all in their LURA. It becomes a deed restriction to that property. And so, so does anybody have any questions about that? I'm going to stop here for just a minute about, and please, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And I don't know if anybody even has anything to add. One of the other people that are pretty knowledgeable, more knowledgeable than me even, that has anything they think they would like to add to that. Okay, well, we're going to move on, and please remember, if you're going to talk, you need to unmute yourself. But I can't see you like I can in Teams, so we'll keep moving on. And you're more than welcome to send me questions or put questions in the chat. I can't see the chat at the moment. I've got to figure out how to do that. The way was sharing my screen, I don't see the chat. So we're going to get into the application process. The rules for the 9% housing tax credit program and for all of the state housing programs is in the qualified allocation plan, or the QAP. So this is the application. We're going to open up here. This is the QAP. And if I can go back, I apologize. I didn't take down the, okay. So we're going to go to the QAP, and page 24 is where we're going to find it won't let me jump. So you're going to see at the bottom of page 24, it has the deadlines. It says the opening application period began on the 4th of January, and the deadline for pre-applications was on the 8th. That being said, pretty quickly we should be able to see a spreadsheet, and I'll show you in just a minute, online with these pre-applications. Once the pre-applications are the list of pre-applications are put on the website, that's really everybody's first look at who's all applying for tax credits in which areas. And you'll see a lot of developers will put in several pre-applications because they have no idea who else is out there trying to apply in their areas. And I can tell you, most developers don't talk to us, especially in the urban areas. Most developers won't talk to us about what they're planning to do until they see the pre-applications out there and it becomes public knowledge, because they don't want to take the risk of us disclosing that to another developer. And because, again, this is very competitive and it's a lot of money. And so so they're very, very, hold their cards very close to their chest when it comes to preparing their pre-applications. Now, you may have some developers you worked with in the past that trust you. Don't ever share information that you get from one developer with another one. That's going to really compromise the work we do in the community if they can't trust us. But please don't ever share information from one developer to another. Again, it's highly, highly competitive, and we're out to advocate for affordable housing. So then there's a couple of other deadlines here, but the most critical ones are the January 4th, the January 8th, which is the deadline for pre-application, and the big one is the March 1st. That's when the full applications are due, and they are due without fail on that day. And you're going to see that the developers are scrambling to get those done when we start getting to the middle of March, because they've got to have everything into them. At least the letters that we do in their applications, there's some things that they can do following that. And if you go down here, you'll be able to see some other things that they can provide later. But that full application is due on March 1st. And so when we're helping them understand that they're going to get very nervous if we're helping them and we don't have letters of support by about the 15th of March, because these applications cost them a very significant amount of money. These applications, for them to put together a tax credit application, a full application, it can cost a developer between $50,000 and $100,000 to put together the application and submit it, because they have to do things like they have to, in order to get the land tied up for their property, they have to show that they have it under contract. And usually to hold it under contract for a period of time, they are, usually to hold it under contract for a period of time, they're going to have to give the seller some earnest money, and it could very well be hard money, meaning they lose it if they don't close the deal, and the buyer gets the money. Usually there's tiers of that. Once they're awarded, they'll put up more money to secure it, or they have to put up more money to secure it for a longer period of time, because even once they're awarded, it takes quite a few months to get these deals closed. So we're going to go back. So again, that's where the deadlines come in, and that's the process. And again, those deadlines are really important. The other thing I know we've talked about a lot, we all are familiar with, but the barriers to developers that we can help them with. First of all, Nimbyism, and I put a link in here for Nimbyism. It talks about ethical deals with Nimbyism, but it just really is a good piece of information about people's how you'll even have good people that will take a stand on Nimbyism and somehow justify that or rationalize it. And so it's a good piece for you just to touch and read. But Nimbyism is a horrible barrier that we deal with all of the time. It has to do with not in my backyard, meaning people say I'm all for affordable housing. I'm an affordable housing advocate. Just don't build it next to my house, because those people, I don't want those people around me. And those people I can tell you, once these 9% tax credits are built, they're absolutely beautiful, and they really don't have normally a lot of problems. I have a couple of, I think I've used an example before, a couple of issues with a couple. One of them is primarily because the city didn't do their due diligence on the developer, and the developer built very bad buildings. The buildings are a problem. But anything having to do with affordable housing, even though it's the building and that has nothing to do with the affordability of the people that live there, the building, people use that against us going forward. Just like people used the old public housing against us. As we start talking about affordable housing, most people's image in their mind is the old public housing that was built in the 1960s, where the government did us no favors because they did this affordable housing, but they wanted it to be no frills, and making it no frills made it ugly, and so nobody wanted it in their neighborhoods. And so now people use that against us. So also cities use city support, which is incredibly important. So the city needs to vote to support the property. They can not vote to support it, and that's pretty much a deal killer. Zoning, the city can vote and support it. We see this all the time, and then they turn around and don't approve the zoning. So they kind of make it look like we're in support of affordable housing, but then they don't approve the zoning, and that's really another way for them to kill the deal and not have to have affordable housing in their neighborhood or appease their constituents. Again, it's a very competitive process, and there's a significant cost in the process of doing this. How we as housing navigators can help. We can assist the developers. The biggest thing we do really is assist them in getting letters of support from nonprofit organizations, usually that we have relationships with, that we can get into and talk to. Some of the developers have already gone out and met with some non-for-profits and got them kind of lined up to support themselves, but we can help them get that. I do say in regards to that, I do my due diligence on the developer, because I think it's important that I'm not sticking my neck out asking the social service, the non-for-profit executive director, to write a letter of support for somebody that I don't feel good about. And when I say I don't feel good about it, I've got to know that there's some significant problems that have gone down in the past. I'm not in the position to be judging one against the other. I just want to make sure there's not significant problems that are going to come back and bite us. So I do know of a couple developers that I have found out there have been some pretty significant issues with, and I just won't. I just steer clear of that. And if you need help doing due diligence on developers, the best thing I know to do is go look at other properties that they've built and talk to the landlords, call them. I really encourage the city leaders to go look at other properties the developers built, do their due diligence, and make sure. Now, I don't do the due diligence for the city. I may come in and talk in favor of affordable housing, but they need to do their own due diligence. But I do my due diligence in regards to asking people for letters. Now, we can go to city council meetings and speak in support of a developer or of the need for affordable housing. That's really a very easy thing for us to do in doing that. And also, I talk a lot, usually when I go, especially in the small communities that haven't had affordable housing before, talk about how nice any tax credit housing has been in the last 15 years. It's really nice stuff. You would not know it's affordable housing. So we can attend public meetings. We can work with neighbors. a lot of times, if we've had Nimbyism in the past, maybe off cycle, when we're not in the heat of the battle in getting an application processed, we can go sit down and talk to some of the community leaders and help them understand affordable housing. Many times it is an education deal to the point where they just don't understand what they're talking about. You take about affordable housing, they're thinking about 1960s public housing. They don't understand that it's very, very, very different than that. And so, but it's a lot of times it's very hard to reason with a neighborhood association when they're in the heat of battle and they've already bought into some of these fictitious fears that are put out there. And I used this example before just because it was so prevalent. I mean, it was such obvious. A deal in the city of McKinney, Texas, they were trying to get the neighborhood association was trying to get the city council to pull their support from a developer that they were supporting for a community. And everyone who came in said, one after the other, there were probably 700 or 800 people packed the city council chambers. And these things can get very, very ugly. And one after the other said, I can't believe you're supporting an apartment complex that has no money in the budget for maintenance. And I know you probably heard me use this example before, but I can tell you no finance organization is ever going to finance a property without looking to make sure that the property is going to be taken care of, because they have to make sure it's in good shape, because that's their collateral for getting their money back. And so there is, for anybody to even think that a developer could borrow $25 million on an apartment complex and not have any money in the process for maintenance is just a ludicrous thing. But these people have never done that. You know, they bought homes, and you know, when you go out for a mortgage for your home, you don't have to submit how much money you set aside to replace the air conditioner if it goes out in 5 years. They do. These developers have to have all of those things in the process of submitting their applications for funding, and so it's just a ludicrous thing to think that they wouldn't have money in the budget for maintenance. Okay, finding developments in your area. This is the pre-application log. I'm going to take you to, and now we're going to start showing you once the pre-application log comes out. You're going to go to the TDHCA website. I can't do this and take you right to, I thought this link was going to take us right to you're going to go to the multifamily program, and you're going to go over here to 9% tax credit. And very, very quickly here, you're going to see the 2001 cycle come up here within the next few days, because they're going to start having the pre-application. But if we go down here and we see this on January 17th of last year, this is when they posted the first pre-application log. And you can see they posted updates to it between the 17th of January and the 24th of February. But this is the pre-application log that you're going to have to download. And once you download it, you'll open it up. Let me make sure I get all the screen. I'm sorry, it's coming up on my other screen. Are you able to see that? And I'm going to ask you, Chan, because I know you can hear me. I don't know, Chan, are you still on?
I am still on, but I won't be able to stay on too much longer.
Yes. Can you see the spreadsheet?
Actually, all I am seeing right now is all the participants.
Hello? Okay. Let me figure out how to reshare this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let me, if I move this over here, do you see it?
No, and what about other folks? All I'm seeing is just the.
I don't think you're sharing your screen anymore.
Okay,
yeah, we're just seeing the gallery view of everybody.
Okay, let me share the screen. Something happened. Yeah, it does show that my screen's not resharing. I don't know what happened there, sorry. Okay, can you see that now?
It says you've, yep.
Okay, so I'm going to go back and just show you real quick where I got this from. Real quick, if you go into the TDHCA website, and can you see the TDHCA page now?
Yes.
Okay, and you're going to go down here, and I'm showing you last year, so it's going to be at the bottom. But down here where it says January 17th, it says the housing tax credit pre-application log. We're going to see the 2001 show up here. As you can see, this was the 17th of last year, of January last year. In the next few days, we should see this pop up for 2021. So once you get to that, you're going to have to download that sheet, and then you're going to have to look into your region. And the ones at the top, just so you know, the ones at the top are at-risk set aside. This is money that has been set aside for properties that are already built, that are at risk of losing their affordability because they're aging out of their affordability period. And so TDHCA is giving more money to re-extend the affordability period on it. Some of them are rehabs, some of them are being acquired by someone else, but this is called the at-risk set aside. But what we're really into looking at here, and the part that's really competitive, and I'm in Region 3, so and you can see in Region 3, and I share Region 3 with Dallas and Tarrant counties, but in Region 3, you're going to see for rural applications, for the pre-applications, right off the bat, we had, what is there? There's eight applications for pre-applications. Now you can see right under here that they're vying for a total of $603,000 in tax credits. So in the rural areas where I serve, that's going to fund one property. So as all of these 8 people are vying for really one apartment complex, and you can see all of them all but one asked for the maximum amount of tax credits available to them. And so then we're going to go down to the urban area, and you're going to see there's just a substantial, and Kelly in Tarrant County had a number of them applying in her area, but there's 52 pre-applications in the urban area of Region 3 last year. And you can see if you get over to the points over in column V, you can see the point system where if you look up in rural, there's 3 of them that have 133 points each. This is where I get into points are very, very important. When you get into the urban area, you're going to see there are 5 of them that have 39 points. There are 7 of them that have 38 points. And so the points each are very important. So this is where you're going to find out who's applying for your area. In the left-hand column, you'll see a number here. And this number is for the application number for the property. So I'm going to show you, so if you take down that number, the 20211, and we're going to go down here, and underneath the pre-application log is the individual image of the application. So if you go in here and you look at the 20211 and you open that up, that's going to give you the pre-application for that development, and it's going to tell you who the development people are. You can see on this one, right on the first page, you have the names and phone numbers of the contacts for that development. That way you can get a hold of them and know who to contact to help them with their process. And that's a really important thing for you to know all the way through it. I know we're getting, because of the issues we had up front, we're getting short of time. But that is how to find the applications. Once the pre-applications log is done, then you're going to go into from pre-applications right after the first applications are submitted. You're going to start seeing a full application log, and then there's some other logs here of who got their support from the government. These are things that the developers use. I don't ever get into these because a lot of these are really get into some fine detail. but they'll keep updating the log all the way through the year. And you can see the most recent update was November 4th. So now if I go into November 4th and open this up, now you're going to see a very different view. Sorry. Okay, so let's go down to region 3 again, and you can see we went from the rule applications, all of the developers fell out except for one. The only one who ended up at the end of the day in there was one development, and they fell out, and this is who was awarded. Now you're going to see down here in the urban area, it shows you what applications were awarded funding in the 2020 cycle. But you also will usually see 1 or 2 properties down here that have been cleared because one of these still could fall out for some reason or another. And so they usually have the next one cleared and ready to go because there are various factors like the city pulling their support or for some reason their funding falling out of place. Something can happen. It's not often it does, but it does happen and it can happen. But so again, I want to show you one other thing down here. You'll see there were $16.9 million worth of tax credits for the urban areas that we are. They awarded 15.46 million was awarded. So they get as close to that as they can. Sometimes they go on one of them, they're going to go over it. The other one, they're going to go under because they kind of move around the few tax credits that are left in order to fund as many properties as they can. But you're going to see also there's a maximum amount of money that can be used for elderly properties. So you're going to see up here where it says exceed elderly max, means of this $16.9 million of tax credits, there's only 6 million, and I apologize, my menu just moved but there's only 6.8 million can be used on senior properties, and that's a maximum. And so you'll see that once the properties and it will say whether they're elderly or not. I think the column's hidden here, but it will tell you whether their general populations are elderly, restricted. But that's the maximum money that can be awarded to them. So let's get back out of here. And again, the full application number is right on the left-hand side, and you can go in and see at the bottom of the page up here where it says individually imaged full applications, and that's where you can go through and get a lot of detail. I can tell you that's a big application. So let's go back. Apologize, I keep resetting one of this. Okay. And so what's in my region? One of the things that I need to point out is the regions for ADRC are different than the regions for TDHCA. You can see I'm in region 3 for TDHCA, and I'm in region 4, I think it's 4A for the ADRC Housing Navigators. So the region numbers don't, so if you go here, you'll get a regional map for TDHCA, and these are TDHCA's regions. But those don't line up with our regions. Just make sure that I make that point because don't be looking for the number that I've given you as for our ADRC. So then we're going to go down to, and we talked about urban versus rural. Usually there's an amount of money assigned to the urban area within a region, and there's money assigned to the rural. The other thing I want to point out is because our regions don't match, there's many of us that are sharing our region with other housing navigators. I share my region with Kelly and Iris, Kelly in Tarrant County and Iris in Dallas County. We share the region, so we're competing against each other basically for new affordable housing units. We acknowledge that there's a different environment. I'm going to use this example for 2017. What we did to get them help. And the one in 2017 again was Palladium. I won't go back into that. I know we're running out of time. So I won't go into that. But the application number. I showed you how to look up the application number, to research the developer's track record. If you get in a pickle with that, you can reach out to me and I can see if we can brainstorm an idea of researching the developer if you'd like to do that. You can go to their websites. You can really go to their completed developments, or you can make calls and ask questions. That's a big way to do it. I've called city council people in areas and said, tell me about your experience with X and X development. And usually you'll if there's a real problem, you're going to get an earful. But usually I can tell you, usually the Nimbyism and the problems once these developments are built, they completely go away because these are beautiful apartment complexes. I will tell you, they're really, really nice. So obtaining letters of support. In order to do that, usually what the developer will provide us is an information, and this is the one that was provided to me by Palladium on the Palladium Denton when I was working with them on that. This was the prospectus they sent me, which had an incredible amount of information in it. And this isn't going to show right because there's a big picture in it. But this was their development prospectus that I was able to share with the non-for-profits that had pictures of the proposed development, the site plan, where it was, and told them pretty much all about it, but also talked about some of their track record. So, and here they used the mayor of the city of Aubrey as one of their references. Well, we helped them in Aubrey too, and that was their first affordable housing development. And so they've done, I think they've got probably 12 or 15 now. But so they should provide with this. Not all of them do. Some of them, most of them are not this elaborate. Some of them are maybe 2 pages long. But if they're really professional, they will provide it. But some of them don't. And so sometimes you have to go. I've gone into the application or the pre-application and got some of the information myself. But this is kind of the information that you're going to want to have to share with the non-for-profit in trying to obtain the letter of support. Then usually the developer will provide you with a template for the letter of support, and this was provided to us by Palladium, and it has Marnie Holloway. She's the director for the Housing Finance Division at TDHCA. There's really 2 or 3 people it can be addressed to, but Marnie's the top of the line, and it has all of the vital information. It has to have the application number. It has to say that the person, the organization providing the letter is a tax exempt organization. And there's some things that you have to include with it, but there's some things that have to be in the site address has to be in the letter, because TDHCA will throw out the letter if it's not complete. Usually the developers want, they can get a maximum of points for 2 letters. Usually they want at least 3 in case one gets thrown out for some crazy reason. They have a backup letter in there. So we usually help them get at least 3, if not more. So that's the letter. So then once the letter's signed, here's usually the non-for-profit will go in and they'll add more information. Here's the example of the letter that came in from Interfaith Ministries in Denton. When I send you the link, this page in just a few minutes, you'll have all these links and be able to pull these up. I've created links for all of these documents. So there's the letter, and then in addition to the letter, you're going to have a copy of the non-for-profit's IRS 501c3 letter, and you're going to have to include that is a must-have, because they have to prove that the person is that the organization is a non-for-profit, and the person writing represents them. But then you also have to have some kind of information, I'm sorry, on the non-for-profit that talks about its services, and most importantly, it's where it's served. It's got to explain its service area that includes the area where the development is being built. They have to acknowledge that that's part of their service area, and so that that qualifies them to write a letter of support for that development. But the information on the non-for-profit, sometimes I've seen them just pay screenshots of their web page. I've seen various other things, but there's got to be information about the non-for-profit. There's got to be the letter. It has to be signed, and it has to be have a copy of the IRS determination letter. And even though you want them to mail this to Austin, this package, the developer has to have a copy of everything, even the signed letter, to put in their application. They absolutely want that. They don't want to. There has been problems in the past, and because of those problems, developers don't take that chance anymore, where letters got lost somewhere between, or you'll have organizations that say they send them and don't actually send them, or get busy and don't mail them. For whatever reason, they want the letter and this backup material in the application, so you want to provide it to them as well, to the developer as well. A few notes about the point system for these developments. I'm jumping a little bit. This is something I added this morning. If you want to know about income levels, here is a link to the QAP, and on page 47, you'll see it talks about income levels and how they get points for how the points vary depending on how many 30% units and 50% units the developer does. You're going to also talk about the requirements of accessible apartments for people with special needs. You're going to find that on page 55 of this year's QAP. And these links will take you right to the QAP. And then resident services, the first one shows where they can get up to 11 maximum points. And the second one shows the point value for each service that they put in their application that they're willing to provide. Now, these services, just so you know, they go in the LURA 2, and they are part of the deed restriction. And one of my pet peeves in the past has been, and they've gotten a little bit better, has been some of these developers, they do a really good job with these services for the first couple of years, and then after that, they with the change of management and pressure on management to increase the bottom line for the company, they start doing what I call smokescreen services. They provide very little substance with their services, and so we talked about this in our meeting back in October about now they have to give the tenants a letter telling them what services they're required to provide. But also, as far as this service point system, I did a public comment here a couple of months back, and I gave you guys a copy of that too, I think, talking about a need to revamp this, because we really need service coordinators on these properties in order to help these residents take advantage of resources that are in the community. And these single mothers, people with children with disabilities, and even the elderly people, they don't know how to access that stuff. And so you'll see, if you go back to that, it just says how they've undervalued that in regards to points. And I'm hoping we can put a push on them to give service coordination a much higher point level so that we see it in more apartment complexes. So in closing, I'm going to talk about the do's and don'ts when offering to help. When offering to help, we do want to offer to assist them in obtaining these letters of support. We do not want to take on responsibility for these letters. You know, if you have no control whether the non-for-profits come through with the letters. Now, I will tell you, if you want to develop a good relationship with the developers, you want to bend over backwards to get these letters from these non-for-profits and make every. I mean, I really work to make sure I get them. But if one of them falls through, I don't want them coming back to me saying, well, it was your responsibility to do this, and for that reason, my application didn't get awarded. So please don't take on that responsibility. Offer to help and do as much as you can to do that. Do provide letters, development, and encourage them to do their due diligence. Okay, so you can send them information about the development. You can tell them about it, but you don't do their due diligence for them. Let them do their due diligence. Once again, if there ends up being a problem with the developer, but I will tell you, I won't even ask them for a letter if I haven't done my due diligence. But let them do their own, because I don't want to be vouching for a developer and having them come back, having the non-for-profit come back to me when there's a problem, or the city even, when there's a problem with that. But usually, if they have a good track record, they're going to have several properties on the ground that are running very, very well. And I can tell you, these people are held to a much higher standard than your for-profit or your market rate developers, because nobody's watching over them. These properties, I can tell you, are highly scrutinized. When these developers go to make applications in other areas of the state or city or whatever, those people, and we're encouraging them to do that, go look at their track record and see how good of a job they've done in the past. So they're under pretty heavy scrutiny to do a really good job so they can continue developing. Do offer to attend and encourage others to attend public meetings in support of affordable housing and the need. Do not take responsibility for making sure that people show up and they're there to speak, because people will tell you they're going to come, and you know as well as I do, some of them have no intention of it, and some of them have good intentions, but something goes wrong and they don't get there, and the developer will get very frustrated. Where were the people that were going to talk in behalf of us? So, and again, with this point, I bend over backwards to try to make sure I get people there. I want to develop a really good relationship with those developers, because once that property is built, or as they're building it, I want them to let me know when they're going to open up the waiting list for new units. When I say the waiting list, when you know the eligibility, the application list for people applying for those units, because you want to have that with your relocation contractors so that they can call right when that thing opens, and that list opens, and get the names of their people in there, or have their people call and get the names of their people on that list for getting those 30% units and even the 50% units. One last thing I'll add is the 60% units really seem to work pretty well with housing choice vouchers. And when I say that, in a lot of the areas, especially since the market has been so well, we have tenants that have been awarded housing choice vouchers, but cannot find a landlord who will take them. And that's a pretty cyclical issue we deal with. When the economy is really good and rents are great, landlords don't want to put up with the process of dealing with the vouchers. Sometimes the vouchers don't pay as much rent as they can get from the market. When the market rate for apartments, when it softens, the market softens, and the rents start coming down, and they start having some vacancies, usually they're more open to looking at people with vouchers. But these affordable housing communities have to accept vouchers, and they work very well with their 60% AMI units. So if you have someone that's looking for a voucher and can't find a place, I encourage you to look at for the tax credit properties and talk about their 60% units. Is there any questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And like I said, I will get this out to you in an email shortly. I'm going to stop sharing. Does anybody have any questions or anything? I'm trying to see if I can see the chat now. Yes, it can be cutthroat. Judy says it can be cutthroat between the developers. It absolutely can. What's the percentage of total by income? 30%, 50%, under the 9%. You're gonna. I gave you a link for that. The link is in the QAP and it's the total has to do with the specific application that they submit, and they qualify for certain points by offering a more 30% units, they get more points. Well, the problem you got to see on the other side, and the limit to 30% units is at the end of the day, they're going to get less income for those. And so they've got to make sure their finances work, that they're able to pay their mortgage and keep up the property once they build it. So you go into the QAP and you'll see the formula of how the point system works, but then you have to look at their specific application and see how many they offered of what units. It really has to do with the scoring system and them applying for a certain number of points and how many they're going to offer to make their deal work. Sienna, can you share your screen? I'm sorry, I couldn't see this while I was sharing my screen. I didn't realize that the screen had stopped sharing. I will send this, and I'm recording this too. So just so you know, I'll go back and look at the recording. I hope I can see that. If not, I'll try to fix that somehow in the recording. But we are recording it. Okay. Okay. So I guess Chan had to leave. Now we have to leave.
Marty?
Yeah, go ahead, Judy. Go right ahead.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't sure if I was. Anyway, good. Very good presentation. I just wanted to add to the competitiveness of tax credit. Oh, part of it too is which category, and this is also relative to Nimbyism, which categories will developers most likely go under when they submit their pre-apps, when they do their whole plan. Because of Nimbyism, the most acceptable category is elderly. So it makes sense that that cap would be exceeded first. The least popular and the most likely to generate Nimbyism is families, because it comes with single moms with kids, and the typical perspective that goes along with public housing. So that's one political reality at the local level. The other is relative to the cutthroat. There are some bad apples in every cart, okay? And some will be pretty, well, not very ethical when it comes to getting support from local, like city councils, against their competitors. So those are things to be aware of when we look at, as a housing navigator, in terms of supporting these applicants, okay? We also need to bear in mind when, and I'm talking about the local level, that when city council is asked for support, that typically means they have to put some money into that support. Where does that come from? You need to do diligence there too. It could come out of home funds. The city's, the PJ's allocation of home. Now, most likely, that's a pretty slim budget that's already stretched to do the best they can for the lowest income in your community. So be mindful that something could be shifted out of being supported with money being tapped going into tax credit properties. And I'm not saying that's what all cities do, but that's usually the source of revenue that the city can bring to that for any property that's happening within their jurisdiction. So those are just a couple of things I've learned over the years relative to the tax credit program. There's other things too, but that's enough for now.
That's very good, Judy. Very, very good. Thank you so much. There were a few of you I didn't realize that I had not given you opened up your mics. So I know you were one of them. I think Mike Garcia was one of them. But I've opened up your mics now. You should be able to talk, or at least unmute yourself and talk. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask. In regards to Gloria, I just wanted to, your question about does each complex have to offer a certain number of affordable housing units? And I hope I answered that, but that's really has to do with their application. They're going to make an application, and the more affordable housing units they provide, the more points they're going to get, and the deeper that their rents subsidy is, or I should say that a different way. The more 30% units they have, are going to get them some more points. Again, I put a link in this page that I'm going to send out to you that goes into the QAP, and I put the page number on it for that. When it talks about income levels on page 47 of the 2021 QAP. And again, this page will have a link directly to the QAP, but you'll have to scroll down to page 47, and you'll see where the points are for the different income level apartments are. But it's very, very different in each case. There's some properties that will try to not provide any 30. They'll try to do a lot of 50 and 60 units, 50 and 60% units. But they've got to be able to score well enough to get funded. And so that's part of the competitive nature of it. Anybody else have anything else they want to ask or say? Well, I hope you all feel free to ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question.
Okay, I feel bad for you. No, hold on, just a minute. Emergency mask in my pocket. Okay.
Hold on, just one second.
Also, this is the weirdest Zoom.
Okay, so I will let you all go, and I appreciate you attending today. I know we went over. I apologize. We had the technical problems up front. I will, as soon as I get off, I will find out what the issue is of emailing this out and get this emailed out to all of you in a matter of. If you don't have it in a matter of 20 minutes, if you'll send me an email, I'll reply to it with the link and the document attached. Thank you all for joining us. I appreciate it greatly. And again, we have team meetings this week. We have team 4 on Wednesday and team 2 on Thursday. So if you're on those teams, please remember we've got our team meetings. I haven't sent out the links yet, but I will send them out today. Thanks and have a great day, y'all.
Thanks, Marty.